Stay tuned for a presentation on what you can do now to prevent wildfires wrecking your life and wrecking the life of your community. So wildfires are a factor of life now, it appears, across the globe. Australia's been really ravaged the last few years. Northern California, Western and Central Canada have all had major forest fires, wildfires of large duration that have caused a lot of human suffering, a lot of animal suffering, a lot of pollution. And now, because of human-caused climate change and the fact that the hotter and drier it is, the more likely you are to have forest fires, both by human causation and by natural causes, which is mostly lightning but not exclusively. Forest fires are a fact of life almost everywhere there are trees or moors. And I think with the continuing global climate change, which is generally speaking warming the planet and drying the planet for more longer periods, we're all going to be faced with the potential for more and more wildfires. So whether you actually think human-caused climate change is a thing or not, or whether you actually believe the planet is warming or not, is somewhat irrelevant. What you must understand is that wildfires are more and more common. So it is up to us as the prepared individual to think seriously about forest fires. Where I am in Canada, I never really thought about this until very recently, and I'm starting to seriously think about it. In Canada there's about 8,000 wildfires every year. The risk areas are mostly British Columbia and the boreal forest zones of Ontario, Quebec, the Prairie Provinces, the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, and they usually occur between May and September. Obviously the longer and drier the summer is, the more likely you are to have forest fires in September, October, and we're starting to see that with climate change. In the United States in 2012, there were 1,270 large or significant wildfires. Now this is a wildfire of forest of over 100 acres or grass of over 300 acres. This 1,270 large or significant wildfires in 2012 actually represents a total of 1.9% of all wildfires. Most wildfires are small and burn themselves out, or are small and put out by humans. Only about 4,244 structures were actually destroyed, of which 2,216 were homes. The bad news is this is well above the average. The average would be 1,416 residences. So between 1999 and the average data point of 2011, a little bit small to hang a data point on, it does appear that the destruction and frequency and size of the very big large wildfires is increasing. And I think anybody who's watched Northern California and Texas and central UK and Alberta fires and Australia over the last few years, after last year really, it was hard to argue that there are not major significant dangers from wildfires that may be historically more dangerous than we thought about in the past. So contrary to popular belief, meteorologists are actually really bad at forecasting wildfires. We're good at spotting areas where it's highly likely to have a fire, but to actually pinpoint which areas are actually going to go up in flames before they go up in flames is hard to pinpoint. And anybody that's followed closely a geographical forest fire near where they live will also know that although meteorologists are good at saying the winds will probably do this and the winds will probably do that, in the actuality of a forest fire they're completely unpredictable. Very unpredictable, and that for us is a key thing to take on board. So the traditional advice is a three-pronged approach with wildfires. Prepare for it in advance by trying to mitigate and protect your area and also getting ready to evacuate. Anticipate evacuation so you're not actually evacuating like a lot of people are doing when the flames literally are covering the roads and near the houses. That's a really late evacuation, and a lot of things could go wrong there, and a lot of people in Australia have actually burned to death in their cars because of a late evacuation. Now I'm not blaming those people and I'm not blaming the government for lack of warning. What I'm saying here is wildfires are inherently unpredictable. If there is one in your area of significance, get ready to flee, and flee before you're told to if you can. The other is evacuation. You need to know your evacuation routes. A lot of places in rural areas have one evacuation route. So that even stronger makes the case that you evacuate before the fire engulfs your area, because you may have cut off. Now for prepping, I would actually suggest you don't just evacuate. I would suggest that you set things up for fire. You may have to stay and fight the fire. Now, in a grid down situation, you may have a decision to make, risking your life to fight the fire, or fleeing from it and losing everything, and thereby losing your life later on. So you have to really balance the risks. Be prepared to fight the fire, and I'll be talking quite a bit about how to do that. I don't recommend that. I do follow the guidelines. Get out. In the modern age, you've got insurance and all the rest of it, and I'll talk a bit about insurance, and get out. But in grid down, you may have to stay and fight. So it's best to know how to, right? So I put some links in, really good links. Look at them, print them out, especially if you're at risk from wildfire. If you live in a desert and surrounded by sand, then frankly, why are you watching this? But you might be caught in a wildfire whilst you're traveling or on holiday, so maybe it's a good idea to think about it. The firesmartcanada.ca is a site I recommend. There are a lot of sites in the United States and probably in England and Europe now, but I think the firesmartcanada.ca one's a really good site for a lot of different reasons. So have a little look at it and see what you think. Anyway, we all know the old Smokey the Bear stuff, you know, stop smoking because it's killing you, don't throw cigarettes out, don't have metal objects hitting the ground, don't have your car driving over grass that could set fire because of the exhaust, all of those general things. So what I want you to look at now is a couple of things from the FireSmart one, and it's actually about proofing your home for fire. So there's basically 3 zones, and the advice is to actually start from the inner zone to proof against fire and move outwards, because that's where the utility is going to be most best, is inside rather than the outside. You need to do all 3 zones. So you need to have a metal roof, yeah, if you can. You need to make sure your chimney is frequently cleaned, and you need to make sure there's a proper and decent fire screen on top of it, because you could start your own wildfire. You want to make sure that the grass is green around the area of the house, and for 30 meters around the house itself, up to the walls, you want to have green grass. I would argue that in really serious fire areas, you might want to consider gravel there as well. But you don't want to have any bushes or shrubs or anything that could actually catch fire within that 30-meter zone. This also means that if you've got the property, and most rural properties have, is you want to have your furniture and your barbecue pits and everything else outside of that 30-meter zone. Now, for those of you Americans, that's about 35 yards. It's quite a distance, but that's what they recommend. If you also paint your house white, it will have some reflective use. If you're able to have more than one hose and have a good water supply that won't fail because of electricity failure, you might want to consider pre-soaking that 30-meter area, and also pre-soaking the roof and the walls as much as you can. And there is an amusing video, which I'm not sure, a picture that I'm going to put up, which I'm not sure if it's faked or not, that claims that this guy put his sprinklers on, evacuated, and then when he came home everything was burned apart from his house. I have no idea whether that's a true picture or not, but it wouldn't help, it wouldn't hurt, and it might help if you can, to have as much moisture as possible on the ground and on combustible areas. Now the next zone goes out 10 meters from the structure. In this one you want to get rid of your fuel tanks and your burnable materials. So you want them 10 meters or more away from the area. Your vegetation is going to be mowed down to a small level 30 meters from your structure. And this includes all structures, so outbuildings and the rest of it, you also want to do the same there. Your storage sheds, specifically storage sheds for wood, storage sheds with propane, storage sheds with paint, storage sheds with gasoline in them, storage sheds with mechanical vehicles in them, need to be quite some distance from your house. Now 50 meters, 50 yards is a good area, and if you can 100 meters or 100 yards is a better area to put them out. You avoid burning recycle mulch and compost. So try not to burn the leaves, try not to burn the debris. Every year people start wildfires that way. They think they have it under control, and it goes wrong, goes horribly, horribly wrong. Now this is a much better picture, and it shows more of a traditional area. So 30 feet from the house and 70 feet out from the house or to the property line is where you want to go. Now bear in mind, like the house that we have in the Shire, we can do all of this stuff, but across the road, which is like 25 feet from the house, is a dense forest. So we can't actually clear our forest off because it's not ours. But what we can do is we can go over there and remove a lot of the deadfall. So you want to make sure, if you do have forest around you, that the forest is more than 30 feet from the house. Bear in mind, a lot of trees are like 60 to 70 feet tall. So when they fall, they will fall 60 to 70 feet. So again, I would think, what's the size of the trees you've got? They say remove the lower limbs of all the trees that are close to your house inside that 100-foot zone. What I'm reading is 3 to 6 yards upwards, as much upwards as you can, because the fire can circulate at the bottom and then move up the tree, and then the tree goes up. Keep the trees trimmed at least 10 feet from the chimney. So you want to make sure the limbs are really, I would say the limbs of trees should not be over the house, is what I would say. Reduce the spacing of trees within the whole 100-foot zone from the house to stop fire spreading from tree to tree. Between those areas, plants and shrubs should also be spaced to separate fire from spreading. So if, like me here, you have a couple of raised beds, in the country I would actually have those raised beds probably 6 to 10 feet between each of them. Now it's worth thinking about prevention, and obviously primary prevention is that you won't actually cause a forest fire or a fire near your property that will engulf your property and your neighbour's property. So that said, I'm not going to dwell a lot on this. I think people know what to do and what they shouldn't do, and you can look at those yourself. So this is the dilemma. Grid has gone down. It's been down 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 years. You have your little homestead. You either constructed it, or you've occupied one, or you already own a homestead, because everywhere's a homestead in a major grid down where society does not come back, because almost everybody's going to have to grow food to feed themselves. Sure, you can hunt, sure you can fish, sure you can trap, but pretty much everybody's going to need to wash their own laundry, deal with their own feces and urine, and feed themselves, and that's mostly going to be plant-based for most of us in North America and grid down. So, fighting a fire. Now, I'm not a fireman, and I hope you are not. Life should always take precedence over fighting a fire. That said, in grid down, can you afford to have a situation where you come back after a fire and you've evacuated to find it absolutely destroyed? Probably not. So follow the basic rules that in the first part of this video presentation. Try and mitigate any forest fire that comes into your area from actually hitting your area of where you live and destroying it. Make sure you have large quantities of rain barrels and even bigger barrels, even kiddie pools available, especially in drought areas, because you'll need that for your fresh water. But you also will need it to fight fires. Make sure you have gravity-fed systems or independently powered pumping systems, so in the event of a grid failure or your solar power failure or your wind failure or your batteries failure, that you can actually fight it. Have large buckets of kitty litter or sand or even just very dry soil around the property line, so you can actually cover embers fast whilst you're moving to fight another part of the fire. Have clothing and boots and a decent face mask, which we'll get into in a bit, to help you fight the fire. Be careful of fire leaping behind the property and then coming back onto your property line. Fires, even when they're out, can reignite quite easily. Be careful of all of this stuff. You do not want to come back to a dead home that is burned out in grid down. There won't be any insurance, there won't be anybody to look after you. In Canada, wildfires are not acts of God. So in Canada, your insurance is probably going to cover you unless it actually is written in that it does not specifically cover wildfire. As far as I'm aware, this has not started to happen. Now, it has started to happen in flood zones in Canada where you are not covered for floods, but the act of God exclusion is a myth. Now, in Canada, you can claim immediately or the next day or the next week for fire damage. In large parts, I believe, of the United States, you have to claim within 24 hours, which is really evil if you've lost your entire house and your cell phone. But I guess they have to make money, right? So what you should do before the fire now, before grid down, what you should do is you should photograph everything and have it on a data chip and keep the data chip in your go bag. You should have a go bag anyway if you're in a fire area. A bug out bag or a go bag or a back bag or a 72-hour bag. You should have something. It should have photocopies of all of your passports, all of your credit cards, all of your statements for all of your bills and your banks, so you can actually resurrect your life afterwards. If you can and you can think ahead, try and take the computer hard drive with you as well. You want to make a list of everything that's been destroyed or damaged. Now, if you've listed everything of value in the home before it's damaged, that process will be a lot easier. Call the insurance rep in the company as soon as you can. Like I say, in Canada you do not have to call within 24 hours, but call them when you can. In areas where large numbers of wildfires have hit in Canada, our incident management system almost always will have insurers come into the community to actually meet with you. So that's one good thing that Canadians tend to do. Try and keep your receipts, try and keep everything that you have to try and make the claim. But basically try to avoid wildfires, and if you want to hit, try to avoid it hitting your home. Now this is easier said than done. They are very unpredictable. What I recommend you use is evacuation. Evacuate. Nothing is worth it. Don't try and fight a fire. Set it up so hopefully your home won't be damaged. Turn off the gas, store everything away from the home, try and have a clear zone, try and use the hoses, trying to damp everything, but get out, and get out earlier than people are getting out. People are getting out very late in these evacuations, and it's kind of bad. As a prepper, you should be ready to get up and go at a moment's notice from your house with a go bag or a bug out bag, so that part of the process for a prepper should be easier. And you should of course have lots of spare gasoline, not next to the house, so you're not going to run out of gas evacuating in a vehicle, right? Because you don't want to be lined up and lined up and lined up to try and get gas from a gas station. These fires can move real fast and real quick. Now, the commercially available smoke hoods are recommended by me to fight a fire in grid down. They only last about an hour to 2 hours. I think they're great to have in your bedroom. I think they're great to take on your holiday to a hotel. I do not have one, and I need to get a couple. What you can use in grid down is an N95 or preferably an N100. What you're trying to actually exclude as much as possible, you won't be able to exclude all of it, is the actual particulates in the air, but also the gases that are coming in as well. So be very careful of that. Try and have really strong boots, really good clothing, and really good gloves that won't melt. So don't get plastic, don't get Gore-Tex, get good old-fashioned leather. Remember to be monitoring how hot you're getting. Your clothing can catch fire whilst you are fighting fires. So that's it for this. What do you guys think? Have you ever been in a wildfire? I haven't talked about what happens if you're in a car. I've not talked about what happens if you're on a bicycle or walking in the forest fire. But I will beg of you to take it seriously. If you have pets, if you have livestock, figure out how to evacuate or how to at least try and protect them from a wildfire before a wildfire happens. A lot of people vaguely think about their own evacuation. Preppers should be really thinking about that. But most people don't really think about their cows and their goats and their sheep and their chickens and their snakes, about how to get them out quickly and efficiently, or how to at least leave them behind protected. Right? So think about the other creatures, try and avoid wildfires. We are living in a time where the planet is warming up and drying out with huge deluges in between. So a large significant band of fire across the mid-zone of the world is getting more and more likely to have severe forest fires. Alright, stay safe. Au revoir.
This is a public service announcement. This is only a test.